So thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Brenna Marcichek. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Communications and Outreach Director at Madison Audubon, and I really want to thank you for being here tonight for our Evenings with Audubon presentation by Angela Waupochick. I'm going to give just a quick introduction to Madison Audubon for any of you who are new to our community. We're a local nonprofit that's working with members like you to protect birds and nature in this area. We do that through land restoration. We own and manage about 2,000 acres that are free and open to anyone to visit any time of the year. We also do a lot of citizen science and advocacy work, and we do that through adult and youth education programming as well. This time of year, we do a lot of seed collecting out at our sanctuaries, and we're always looking for help with that if you're interested in volunteering in that way. We'll put a link in the chat here for you to be able to get to the right page to sign up and volunteer for seed collecting. We also have book club meetings and field trips coming up, so make sure to check our website if you're interested in any of those activities. They're really fun and really interesting. This Evenings with Audubon program that we're doing tonight is usually held in person, but of course you're here for the online remix. So thanks for being here. Madison Audubon is also a member of Community Shares of Wisconsin, which is a nonprofit that works to lift up other Wisconsin nonprofits that are doing environmental and social justice work. And they are a co-sponsor for tonight's talk, so thank you to them. I also want to say happy Birdability Week. This is a week for celebrating birders with a diversity of abilities and disabilities, creating awareness around how we can all work together to improve access to birding for all people and all bodies. We'll put a link to the Birdability website and activities in the chat as well, so be sure to check them out as well. They have really great talks going on this week and lots of good social media activity. Okay, now for the main event. We're delighted to host Angela Waupochick tonight. She is a PhD student in forest and wildlife ecology at UW-Madison. For 10 years, her early career focused on seasonal wildland fire and water resources in Wisconsin and the Southwest. Her more recent work as a hydrologist is with the Stockbridge and Muncie community, focused on tribal community wetland restoration and enhancement projects and program development. Then she was awarded in 2019 a National Wetland Award from the Environmental Law Institute for Local, Tribal, and State Program Development, which is amazing. In 2020, she returned to school for her graduate work to focus on tribal specific forest wetland management, development, and forestry education planning. So one more quick note before I hand it over. If you have any questions along the way, please be sure to put them into the chat, and we will be monitoring that. And at the end, when we get to a good time for asking questions, we'll be sure to ask Angela your questions, or you'll have an opportunity to unmute yourself and ask them yourself. So with that, I'll hand it over. And Angela, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to present. I'll just start off just talking about this picture. First off, I just want to make sure that my gallery, that's not obstructing my PowerPoint, right? You guys can't see my gallery? Okay, good. So I want to discuss this picture a little bit. This picture was taken at one of my project sites on the Stockbridge Muncie Reservation. This is early July. My cousin, who's also the GIS specialist that works for the tribe, she's a certified drone pilot, and I thought, great. I need some shots of my project sites. Can you please help me out? So I have a really good photo album of my project sites from the sky. So here to my project interns, Glenn Miller and Sasha and Sean Kasich. Sasha is actually my son. But they're high school students, and they attend Menominee Indian High School. And anytime possible, I'd like to give them a mention, or that my interns are equally invested in the project that I'm working on as a PhD student. So before I begin, when Caitlin had called me and asked me to present, so I'm also a seamstress, and I make a lot of indigenous clothing. And when she asked me to present, I was like, perfect. I just made this whooping crane skirt, and what better group of people to show this artwork that I made that I'd like to wear. This is a ribbon skirt, and I think maybe in my community that maybe it's a little bit different, but I thought, great, what a really good opportunity to wear this skirt, and I just wanted to show this that this was something that I made. So the Menominee clan system with Crane as a Tasha, and historically they were masters. This clan system, people within it are masters of crafting materials, making crafts from materials of the forest. And I don't know if I fit that description, but I am a pretty good seamstress. So I think maybe that skill set has been passed down to me, perhaps. So this skirt kind of tells a story here, and why whooping crane. Well, it's my clan, and also that as a career wetland specialist or wetland advocate, that I'd love to show my work, and this is kind of like my dedication to protecting habitat. So I just kind of wanted to show you some of my work before I started my actual presentation. So a little bit about me. So I'm from Keshena, Wisconsin, up north. I live about 3 hours away from Madison. I lived there basically my entire life, other than me going down to the Southwest for a while. I started out early in my career doing wildland fire operations. I worked on hotshot crews in the Southwest and New Mexico and Arizona. I kind of graduated to Helitech. After a while, I kind of started working in fuels management and doing prescribed burns. Paid my dues as a technician, and then I came back home to the reservation where I kind of started working in water quality and got a couple different jobs. I worked in Milwaukee in the harbor on a research vessel. Worked for my tribe for a little while in water quality. And really, I think maybe my love or my interest really came about when I became a wetland specialist working for the Stockbridge Muncie community. And it was a new program. They were like, okay, we got this grant. You guys, do what you want with it. And before that, I knew a little bit of what wetlands meant to our tribe and maybe what the history was, but I really became very attached, and that's really where I found myself is, what, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to work in wetlands. So I, for about 10 years, I worked with the Stockbridge Muncie community. Eventually took over the entire water resources program, and really what my focus was wetland restoration and enhancement, and looking at ways to improve wetlands across the whole watershed, maybe beyond the tribal border. It was then that the tribe wanted to look for strategies to mitigate emerald ash borer impacts, particularly on the Stockbridge Muncie Reservation. Maybe about 14,000 acres of dominant wetland is black ash, and you knew that we were going to see widespread impacts, and this was something that I wasn't prepared for or trained for, but it's actually become a 4-year investment now, and I loved it so much that I quit my job and became a graduate student to finish the project. So that's how I'm here today, and it's been the best decision I've ever made in my life. As a student at UW-Madison, I'm also involved with the With Science Public Service Fellowship, and also studying community engagement scholarship. And one thing that as a previous tribal manager, I know that my science, my management techniques can be perfect right on, but if I'm not engaged with the community or not actively educating the tribal community or even beyond about what my strategies are and how they're going to work, that it's not going to be successful. So I'm using that fellowship and that coursework and community engaged scholarship to really improve how we develop management strategies for wetland management and for forest management. So presently, I also expanded the project sites to work with the Menominee Reservation, which is where I'm from and where I grew up from. Both tribal reservations they share a border located in Menominee and Toronto County, and they share watersheds. So we know that emerald ash borer isn't going to stop at one reservation, and if I'm going to manage for one reservation, we might as well look at the larger landscape, and that makes sense. In doing so, quitting my job with the Stockbridge Monkey community, I kind of picked up another job with Menominee Tribal Enterprises. And I'm not a full-time employee, but I'm actively engaged in different management strategies and doing some writing management plans. So a lot of people ask me what my expertise is I'm not sure. I think I'm actively working on that. I think I've had the most success or most experience in wetland management and tribal program development. So that's a bit what my history. I just put a few pictures. I have three children. I'm almost an empty nester, so I have one high school student at home yet. So that's kind of still a little strange to me, but yeah, we have a little small hobby farm, and lately I just stay in Madison a lot. So I want to talk a little bit more about wetland management and what previously what my job entailed and where I expect to go from here after graduate school. So I'm not sure the background about what you guys might know about wetlands, but so we know that nearly half of Wisconsin wetlands have been lost since the 1800s, and I can't really speak for whole Wisconsin and maybe the history and the loss and how much is there, but I do know quite much about both reservations and maybe what kind of impacts we've seen. I know starting out from the Stockbridge Monkey Reservation, originally the tribe was from New York. They had traveled to Wisconsin and received 2 townships from the Menominee Indian Reservation. So that was 40,000 acres, and this was just at the turn of the century. We know that before the tribal members had arrived to these 2 acres or these 2 townships, that timber companies and other unknown individuals logged off most of the land, so it was cleared for agricultural purposes, much like Wisconsin, and they're moving to these 2 townships included like a campaign for these tribal members to turn into farmers. But these 40,000 acres, much of it, like 27,000 acres, I suspect, were wetlands, large wetland complexes. So farming was never really an option there, and so the tribe was left with pretty much a bare landscape and unable to farm. However, Menominee, on the other hand, is well known for their forestry management, and the forested wetlands I would say on both reservations, forested wetlands are the bulk of the type of wetland that exists within this landscape. Different wetlands provide different ecosystem services, and if I'm a true wetland manager, and people manage for different things, what's consistent with both tribal programs is that in general we want to manage for forest health or just a healthy landscape. We want to manage for wildlife habitat and to protect biodiversity. So what I'm doing is working towards developing management strategies specifically for wetlands for these tribes, and I wanted to align with the current goals and objectives that the tribe currently uses or is working towards. For the case of the Menominee tribe, wetlands are generally unmanaged and old growth forests. So I have project sites that ash maybe 130, 140 years old that I can tell. Areas that have never been harvested, and as management persists through the forest, that there are precautions that are taken consistent with best management practices for water quality, and also some restoration activities. So wetland management, both tribes, well, the Stockbridge Monkey tribe does have a wetland management plan. I would say that it's still being developed, or it's continually going to be developed, but that's something that the Menominee Tribe or Menominee Tribal Enterprises should put at the forefront of their management strategies, that, you know, these are important places on the landscape and they're equally deserving of the management that the rest of the forest has. And it's unfortunate that emerald ash borer is the reason that management calls for strategies to protect these areas, but that's I think that's going to be a big turning event. That, okay, we realize the importance of these areas, these forested wetlands on our tribal landscape, and now we have this forest health issue that we have to try to mitigate for, and now we know that, you know, moving forward, that on any other forest health issues, that this would also be a consideration. So activities that I've done previously, on the left here, when I was a hydrologist for Stockbridge Muncie, this was actually my first project that I ever worked on. So this was a railbed grade that actually spanned across both reservations, coming from northern Wisconsin through the Menominee and Stockbridge reservations. On the Stockbridge reservation, so this land was actually stolen land. We know that, you know, rail beds, the construction, there's not going to be a lot of turns and twists. You know, a train can't make those. So what happens is it's constructed in a straight line through the reservation, and it disconnected almost like 23 miles of stream and over 400 acres of wetland habitat. Excuse me. So when I started the job, you know, we wanted to look at, you know, okay, what are we going to do with our program? What are the most important tasks that we should focus on? And this was like the big elephant in the room here. Here we have a big pile of rocks that spans across the reservation, and we have impaired, you know, wetlands that really could be reconnected, and they should be reconnected. And that's what we did. That was the first big project, and this was us starting construction on removing some of those elements. On the top right is the bottom, or the vegetation layer of the picture I first showed you. So this is one of my sap flux density project sites where I'm looking at whole tree water use. I'm sorry, I'm gonna just give me 1 second. All right, I apologize. So I just wanted to show you guys, can you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Okay, great. So I have 8 of these projects that span across the Stockbridge Muncie and the Menominee reservations. These sites this year, you can see on the top right that, you know, there was no water in these sites, so we have a lot of drought conditions, but this is what they look like. I have forest research site signs out there, and no one really bothers these areas, but I put it out there as maybe like an educational part, like, you know, you see these kind of foil wrapped around the trees, what's going on here? Well, this is a research site, please don't bother it. On the bottom is a enhancement project. So this is Stockbridge Muncie community land, an agricultural area that the tribe received money to do some reforestation work. You can see in the middle there was a previous wetland that was filled, but, you know, it remained through all the kind of agricultural conversion. So the tribe just planted around this, and I thought, what a great opportunity. Let's expand this area. You know, we know that the larger watershed, you can kind of see the signature of the previous wetlands that were filled. Let's take these areas and let's scrape them back out. Let's take that fill that was put on there over the past 100 years and see what happens. So we took the scraped areas from around the wetland. We made these kind of fake hummock areas around the spoil site. So now it's coming along, but that's the type of work that I've been involved in, and the type of work that both tribes should be planning for in the future. And I think we have a small enough group. If anyone has any questions or just want to discuss, please feel free to chime in. So a little bit about black ash. So our forested wetlands are the most abundant type of wetlands that we have on both reservations. Not all of them are black ash dominant, but most are, and most are mixed species wetlands. So we have a lot of different combinations of black ash with maple, birch. We have actually some with elm, kind of hemlocky areas. And what I want to do, or what the plan is I want to look at, monitor several different components of these wetlands and come up with a strategy to model the hydrology, and then eventually come up with some management strategies that both tribes can use to maintain the forested wetlands without the black ash component. So we know that black ash is going to be lost when that's a hard. It's hard to determine when maybe we'll start seeing the impacts of emerald ash flare. We know that right now it's in Shawano County, which is the Stockbridge-Muncie community is located in Shawano County, and the Menominee Forest is within the same proximity. So what we know about black ash is it's a wetland species. An area that we see almost dominant black ash wetlands is these are areas with high water tables that no other trees can really navigate or grow in. And we see our area, we have a lot of mixed species wetlands, and some of those species like birch or red maple are able to tolerate those higher water tables. And it's actually because black ash is the workhorse of these areas. They're able to to use the water efficiently and expel into the atmosphere, allowing for the water drawdown and other species to grow on the bottom. So that's why these systems are so why we want to manage for biodiversity. How can we keep these areas to canopy? How can we keep them forested? What do we expect when emerald ash borer comes here? So the type of impacts, we know that most of our trees are going to die. We might be lucky and some won't. As the canopy is lost to emerald ash borer, we're going to see decreased transpiration, and we're likely going to see a shift to non-forested conditions. Now, is this going to happen in all our wetlands? Probably not, but we don't know. And this is part of my research is let's look at different wetlands with different water budgets and different species composition, and let's determine what areas that we want to focus our attention to. What are our priority areas, and where are areas that we can make the most gains. So what is my research about? So adaptive management. So I've always been a wetland manager, and now as a PhD student, I'm doing research, which is different, but this is a good experience. And what I want to do is improve the way I manage long term. I have several different monitoring strategies that I'm using to characterize our wetlands, and there's a lot of different mapping systems out there that help us determine what our wetlands are, but they're not consistent, especially within the two tribal reservations. So right now, we know where generally our wetlands are, but we don't really have a good grasp on what the specific acres are or what the composition is. And that's something that I'm actively working on. But eventually I want to model the hydrological response and what we expect that these systems to ultimately become due to emerald ash borer impacts. One thing I'm doing, and what I guess the main monitoring strategy is I've been looking at is sap flux density. So I have a network of 8 project sites spanning across 2 reservations, and I'm looking at determining which trees what is the function of each tree, the whole tree water use in each of these systems. What is the role of individual species? And I'm using that information. I can eventually scale it out to determine transpiration in these areas. sap flux density, that measurement or sap flow monitoring is a really high maintenance monitoring strategy. And it's taken me actually 2 years to really understand how to effectively monitor these sites and how to maintain them. So that's where the two interns have come in and really helped. So bioacoustics monitoring is really where I guess maybe the most questions are directed to when I talk about my research. And this is something I'm also learning. This is something I just started learning myself also. But as a wetland manager, when you start implementing management strategies, it's often difficult to look for ways to measure your success or maybe to assess your strategies. And this is one way using bioacoustics monitoring or forest soundscapes is to design a system where, you know what, these management strategies are working. And this is a system that I think that I'm hoping that I'm building that can be used for the entire tribal forest, not just my research. I also have eddy covariance towers that I'm installing. So like I said before, that flux density is a really high maintenance project and I haven't had the best of luck with it. I'm actually getting better at running these project sites, but really if I want to get a whole understanding of the water budget, I really have to know what the other components on and what the atmospheric controls are in the system. So sap flux density doesn't actually answer that. And installing these eddy covariance towers with multiple measurements that we can obtain using this tower is going to help me determine that water budget for the entire system. And another aspect of my research is this kind of seems like out of left field, but as a wetland manager, like I said before, we need our community engaged in how we manage our resources. And the most reasonable approach is whatever I do, I try to incorporate some kind of community involvement or student involvement when possible. And it's been working out very well that I'm able to use high school interns to work on the project sites. And also I have multiple agencies within the reservation that are our project partners. So Menominee Indian High School is working with me to develop a curriculum and lesson plan and working with these high schoolers on the project. Menominee Travel Enterprises is an active partnership with the project and are able to give me the resources I need to plan a project and to continue maintaining it. Okay, so bioacoustics and forest soundscapes. So with the bioacoustic recorders that I install at my project site, I can look at a wide range of different, birds, mammals, insects, and amphibians. That doesn't mean that I know all of their sounds. We know that animals make sounds, and when I can record these sounds and maybe detect, when they're present and where they're present, this helps me determine what our management strategies should focus on. Who is using this system? Why is it important? And these are really important considerations considering the larger management goals of the tribe. So myself, I don't particularly have a background in wildlife management, but it's a consideration, and it's something that when I was introduced to this type of monitoring strategy, I was very excited because I didn't have a background, and I knew that this is a goal of the tribe, that we are managing for biodiversity, we're managing for better habitat, and I need to learn how to do this, and so this began my journey into learning how to monitor bioacoustics or forest soundscape. So it's a rather inexpensive, they claim, the people that do it, in time efficient strategy to monitor biodiversity. So someone like me, is it time efficient? Because it really does. It takes a lot of time to really go through all these recordings, and we'll do a little exercise here in a minute. What can I do with it? I can detect changes in the forest before they can be observed. And then it's ideal for tribal program with a limited workforce. I guess as a tribal manager, we have several projects going on at one time, and it'd be really nice to focus on one area and really have a really awesome understanding, but it's usually impossible. So any kind of technology or strategies that can make time efficient management is welcome. Excuse me. So I showed you guys previously a picture of a wetland enhancement project where the tribe did this kind of 40 acres with reforestation. And one way to measure success, so this was pretty early in my career, and I kind of made this project plan, and I just kind of followed some guides. I'm like, okay, well, I made this, and here are my goals. Now, how am I going to prove that I reach these goals? So a couple of nights I would sit out there and I would listen to who was using this project, or who was using this area. So this is what I knew how to do previously. Before I entered into graduate school, I didn't know how to make strategies or how to make obtainable targets, and this is what I did. I tried to identify species and their presence, and I marked it down, and this was part of my report. So now that I'm starting to learn bioacoustic and forest soundscape, it's really taken much more meaning. So I put these recorders out in the field, and these are great because I can monitor for maybe nocturnal animals. I can maybe adjust what I'm going to monitor, for certain times of the day. I can pick up a sound, sounds that probably maybe I can't hear, just sitting at a project site. So this is a really nice tool. I'm still learning how to use it, so I can't tell you everything that I haven't experienced anything. But so far, what I'm doing is just building this soundscape library. And when I'm at home at night, I'm writing, I'm working on my coursework. Usually what I'll do is I'll play the cards. And now I'm starting to learn like different bird species and different sounds. And this software program that you're looking at right now, I can parse out different sounds when I can recognize them, and then I'll assign them a number or assign them a tag, and eventually I'll be able to use the software and become more efficient, where I can say, you know what, this is this species hangs out at this site, and this is the time that's there, and eventually I'm hoping that I can build this larger library that is relevant to both tribal forests. And I think that this is going to be a great activity for a high school intern. And that's my hope so far. So I have a little activity. I want to show you guys a little about what my recordings sound like. So this is at one of my project sites. A lot of it is uneventful, but when you do have events, or you do have a lot of sound, it's easy to not identify everything that's going on. So I just want to show you a little bit example. And one great thing about this also is, so I have weather stations, and a lot of times instruments fail. So I have these bioacoustic recorders. I can actually confirm, like, okay, yeah, it did rain that night, or I have a lot of damage like to my sensors that sit in the trees. So I can hear different things that are going on at the project site and confirm, when maybe my instruments are failed. So this is the bear walking through my project site. Now he's found my recorder. So that was one of the one of my sounds that I collected. And you know, there's one thing too is I was really hoping to hear like some kind of creepy ghost sounds, you know, but I've never had anything like that so far. It's just a lot of birds, a lot of frogs. Once in a while, planes, hunters. I guess one thing is I've learned that, you know, when you do get, you know, a lot of action or a lot of sounds, it's easy to overlook the rest of the sounds that are in the recording. So a little exercise I wanted to do is to see if we could identify all these different sounds that were in the recording. Okay, a little bit about sap flux monitoring. So what is that? So what am I doing? I have sensors that I actually make in my house. The COVID situation, I didn't come to Madison for like almost 2 years. So I had no choice but to make these sensors in my house. These two sensors, I drilled two holes into the tree, into the tissues, and the sensors, one of them heats up, and the difference in temperature as sap is being used from the surface into the tissues of the tree and to the leaves. I can take the difference in temperature and determine how much water that tree is using. That's one way that I can determine transpiration of or just individual function of one tree within that project site. And then I can use the larger network to kind of scale up to the stand so I know what the role of each species, black ash and dissociate species are within these project sites. So a lot of my sites are in pretty rural areas. Like I don't expect people to find these areas. It's like a 39-foot plot. And a lot of people are reluctant to go walking through wetlands. So I have this locked up. I mean, the equipment inside is pretty expensive, but I don't. It's mainly for bears. I've had a lot of bear issues. They like to come over and kind of swap my project equipment. So, and then also you see up these sites, these sensors I run off of 12-volt like marine batteries. So these are pretty heavy batteries that I have to lug in and out of the woods, and it's not, I guess, maybe the most fun task, but that's how these sensors are run. I can prolong the battery using solar panels, but being in a closed canopy, they're not always efficient. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm prolonging the life of the battery. Basically, I haven't had a project site where I actually could a solar panel could sustain the battery. So that's really why these project sites are so high maintenance. The heating element really does require a large power supply, and mugging these things through mud and water isn't the funnest. A little bit about high school interns. So this is my son. So how did I get my son working on my project? The COVID situation happened. Originally, I planned for undergraduates and my project partners. You know, I have one from Rylander, I have one from Washington, D.C., researchers from the Forest Service that were going to help me install these project sites and actually, you know, a couple times during the summer, do the site maintenance. I never imagined that doing this stat flux monitoring would be so high maintenance, but it's a daily task to maintain these sites. I had no choice because of travel restrictions. I had to recruit my 16-year-old son to help work on the project site, so he did, and actually worked for me for a year for free, and I really appreciate that. And I really found out, you know what, I don't need to drag all these professionals from all over the place to help me run the project sites. I'm doing just fine with high school students. I know I need laborers and these guys can learn what the systems are doing and help me troubleshoot. And that's exactly, everybody agreed, and I was able to pick up another high school student. So I have two students from Menominee High School that help me maintain the site. At the same time, you know, building a tribal workforce has been an issue as a tribal manager, and it seems reasonable that for us that grow up on the reservation and have a childhood growing up in the forest, that, you know, we're already primed, we're already knowledgeable about our natural resources and where we live in, and why wouldn't we have more professionals managing our resources? It just seems like that this was the perfect pathway for our high school kids, and I'm actively working on building this to expand to more project sites and hopefully pick up a couple more high school kids. So they actually, I was able to pick up some funding through the entomology department at UW and also from the Mortgage Center of Public Service. We're able to pay a stipend for their work, and then they also received academic credit that come towards their graduation. So in doing that, I was able to develop a lesson plan and curriculum for them, and I'm hoping to continually grow that. Actually, we were just featured in the Badger Herald, so I was really pleased that the writer really did highlight these two and their contribution to the project. And this is the type of work we do. You know, working in the wetlands is not for everybody. It's very humid, run into snakes, turtles, it's very hard to navigate through these muddy areas. We lose boots. We come home dirty, we come home smelly. We fall in the water a lot, we fall in the mud, we get hurt a lot, I get poked by sticks. So it takes a special person to really work in these areas. And carrying batteries is just a really difficult task. What do? They help me carry in the project supplies and equipment, and a lot of times we have voltage issues, we have wildlife interference. So we have to come in there daily and do site maintenance and change batteries. Here's some more pictures of what our project sites look like. You can see on the bottom left. So I have no experience in electrical work or anything. So this is something I've learned in the past 2 years is how to maintain or how to set up these circuits. And it's been an interesting learning experience, but it's taken 2 years for me to actually run a functional and SATFO site. So in closing, here's me and here's my intern. I just want to give a shout out to the EPA Region 5 and the U.S. Forest Service, the University of Wisconsin, CALS, and the Mortgage Center for funding my research. Menominee Tribal Enterprises, Stockbridge Muncie Community, Menominee High School, and the University of Wisconsin Forest and Wildlife Ecology Department for being my project collaborators. I put my email information here, and if you ever want to find me, I'm in the Dr. Amy Trowbridge's lab in the entomology department. Let's see. We have 8 minutes left. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you want to take questions while I actively work on trying to get the soundscape recordings going.
Hey, Angela. I know you mentioned earlier that you were using a new speaker tonight. I wonder if you turn off that speaker or disengage it if maybe we would be able to replicate the same sound settings we had earlier.
Okay. Let me,
And we do have a question from John. If you want to take it now, or we can wait for a minute too, if you'd rather. John,
Sure.
do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
Sure, I'll ask it. Angela, could you give us an idea on either or both of the reservations in the wetland areas, what percentage of the trees are ashes, and then also how much damage are you starting to see from the emerald ash borer, or has it gotten there yet?
so the second part of your question, we have not detected emerald ash borer in either type of forest as it is now. We know that we have Shawano, Shawano County, or the city of Shawano, I think the town of Westcott particularly, had detected maybe last year and a couple of years previous. I do have, actually at one of my project sites, I do have some canopy decline and some dying ash, but I actually think it's from drought conditions because I don't see any kind of telltale emerald ash borer present in these trees. The first part of your question, how much percentage of ash is in these areas? It's really hard to say because both tribes use, I guess, have not actively managed these areas. So I think the bulk of their management has been in forest management, and that's largely, for harvest, managing for timber harvest, and for forest health. But these systems aren't harvested, so there's hasn't been any inventory data collected in these wetlands. So it's hard to determine. Just doing remote sensing work, I know that Stockbridge Muncie community probably has about 11,000 acres of dominant black gas dominant wetlands. But it's hard to say for the Menominee Reservation.
Thank you.
Angela, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, congratulations, Waiski Waupochick. Good to see you. Soon to be Dr. Waupochick, Wawanan. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I'm also from the Menominee Nation, so I'm very grateful for the work that Angela is doing. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts about how these changes in the forest does now or will affect human health, the health of the people in the future. Any thoughts that you have on that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think, first of all, emerald ash borer and maybe the changes to forest or wetland has been my focus, but I think a lot of these areas are connected to larger wetland complexes, right? And we know that a lot of these wetlands what is their function? They purify water, they reduce toxins, they have a role in water quality. So that's kind of beyond the scope of my research now, but I think that maybe as we see large scale emerald ash borer impacts or just black gas dieback, I think we're going to see reduced water quality or just reduced habitat. And I think that for the case of our kids, where when we live in a city, you go to pools. Our kids largely, we swim in the rivers, we swim in the lakes. I don't know how much of an impact that's going to be, or if that's a health impact. But I think that is a valid consideration. I think just in terms of mental health too is, we grew up in this forest, and this is something that we're very attached to, and when we see these kind of decline of these areas and that's widespread, I think that there's going to be a really big sense of just sadness and despair. And I'm wondering, I really do think that, that's a relevant or valid concern for this personal attachment and mental health. That's a really good question, and I really have to think about that. But if anyone else has any thoughts, just, what the impacts to health would be.
I was thinking about what you said earlier, Angela, about if the black ash aren't taking up water as they would be, that there would be more water in the system, which would drown out some of the other species that live there. And it made me wonder about like, if there are any food sources or other types of plants or wildlife that Menominee rely on in that area that would be impacted by that.
Certainly, yeah, I think that's a valid point. And also I was thinking, you know, as people are hunters and gatherers, you know, this is something, you know, that my family, you know, we venison is a large part of our diet. And what are those deer, you know, what is the food cycle, you know, the food web, you know, what are going to be the impacts to, you know, on all scales. So, I mean, that's a little bit of something I guess maybe out of my realm, but certainly, you know, I mean, it's good to consider these things.
Well, Ann and Angela, I work on the mental health part of that. We talked about that, and I thought, let's work on something together. I would love to do some projects with you. I can bring our knowledges together. So, well, Ann, and really appreciate your work for our people.
Thank you. Any other questions or feedback? This is really
Angela, what is your favorite thing that you've heard in a recording that you spent hours and hours and hours listening to these recordings that you've collected from the forest, right? What's your favorite thing that you've stumbled upon?
So I have a resident bear at one of my project sites, and then that's actually a recording that I'd like to share with you guys because it's awesome. He, you know, he usually shows up about maybe 5 in the morning, and you can hear him walking through the water, and you can hear him scratching on trees, you know, and sniffing my recorder, and you can hear him kind of pawing around at some of my equipment. And actually, so I have heat shields around the sensors of the tree, and it's shiny, and birds love it. All the wildlife, they love to eat it, you know, and this bear consistently takes his claws and scratches down the heat shield, and it has to be replaced. So, you know, at the first, I think maybe the first couple of times I'm like, whoa, is this a bear claw? Holy crap, you know. But when I started listening to recordings, I was like, oh, there he is. That's crazy. So he hangs around, and actually, so he's been around for 2 years.
Are there any other questions for Angela?
Or feedback? I'm like, really.
I have a question.
Sure.
Angela, this is Bob. Do you have are you able to use any computerized like identification, bird voice identification programs to help figure out what's there? Like I know that some stuff that Cornell is working on, and
Yeah, so actually I do use the Cornell software, and there are libraries from northern Wisconsin that do have some of the sounds, and I've matched some of them up. I also just look at you know, I think UW Green Bay has a nice sound library. So having no background, I'm not like an active birder, or you know, I knew maybe a couple frogs, but that's exactly how I learned or how I identified these sounds, is just kind of looking at internet resources. And so there actually is a lab in forest and wildlife ecology that other students are working on this, but they're not in their research is not in Wisconsin. They're kind of focused on more tropical areas. And I'm not actively in their lab, so I kind of wish that sometimes I was, you know, and I could maybe get better direction, but it's a learning process, and I think, you know, this is something I'll be using in the long term. So I'm sure, you know, in the next couple of years I'll be very efficient at, you know, identifying birds, other species.
Definitely. Good question. Anyone else? Okay, well, if you think of anything, feel free to email and we'll get your questions over to Angela. But thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you, Angela, for sharing your knowledge and your experiences. We really appreciate all of you. So we hope to see you all again soon. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.